Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Bull Take Podcast. I'm Austin Wader. You know that man next to me, the Austin Hill. And ladies and gentlemen, the NFL draft is wrapped up. Got finished this weekend in front of a crowd of over 600,000 in Lambeau Field. I know that may not have been the most enjoyable draft for you, Austin, watching all this Green Bay love that it was getting. But nonetheless, the NFL draft is in the books, and let's say it was a unique NFL draft. We thought that coming in, and the results definitely worked with that.
Yeah, I think we saw in this NFL draft the importance of making a good impression. I know that comes up in one specific example, but I think there were even some picks with players that were kind of like, wow, didn't see that coming. I'll say my Chicago Bears. Their first round pick was kind of a bit of a shocker, I would say, honestly. But I think we saw that a lot through this draft that um and we said this was the potential. Teams there wasn't a clear cut, huge amount of guys being like, oh yes, these are the cream of the crop. We look at maybe Cam Ward was looked at as kind of the number one quarterback, Travis Hunter, one of the top players, and then Abdul Carter. But really, from there, it's just get your guy. And that's what we saw a lot of teams do. Couldn't really move around a whole bunch, so we're going to go and take the guy that made the best impression on us, the guy we think is going to help us win, even if maybe it's too early to make this happen. I think teams went and just got the guy they wanted because they felt that they had a good chance with the guy they loved as opposed to, anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's get into this draft. And unlike ESPN, we will give our credit to the number one pick here. Tennessee going Cam Ward. Listen, we all knew it coming into the draft. It made sense, but still, I mean, it needs to be talked about. Will this guy be the future in Tennessee there? I mean, I've heard comparisons from some people to Steve McNair, who last I checked, he had a decent run in Tennessee as the Titans quarterback. But I mean, he's an athletic guy. They got some good pieces. Got his leading receiver from college as an undrafted free agent. It seems like they're setting up some pieces to help Cam Moore down this first year in Tennessee.
Yeah, I think this is a really good pickup, but uh, it's been clear that the moves they've made this offseason, you think about bringing in Tyler Lockett, and then the picks they've made in this draft. The clear idea is to get Cam Ward ready to have as much success as early as possible. Um, Kind of, looking like a team that maybe wants to try and make some noise in this AFC South this year. Now we'll see if that actually happens. But look, they're putting pieces around their young quarterback early, and they're going to give him every chance in this first year to make something happen. So I'm all for that. But yeah, absolutely, Cam Ward needs to be talked about here. If you watch the ESPN broadcast, the
I,
main ESPN broadcast, you would have thought that Cam Ward was supposed to be a seventh round pick.
yeah. Mhm.
They didn't talk about him at all. They were too busy complaining about Shedeur Sanders not being this pick. And that was a theme for the main ESPN broadcast. I didn't watch the main ESPN
Me
broadcast. I
neither.
watched the College Game Day crew do their coverage. So I had no idea about the Mel Kiper meltdown that went basically with every pick every team made until the fifth round, where Shedeur Sanders was not selected.
Yeah.
Uh, Mind-boggling to me. Um, I don't know. I'm a little bit of a hater, so I guess maybe I have a biased opinion. I I don't know what the big deal is. The tape's not good. The attitude is terrible. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very valid point. I was watching NFL Network. I watch it for Daniel Jeremiah solely. Shout out Daniel Jeremiah, one of the best at his job. Um, But no, I didn't hear about it until, I saw it on, social media and all that because I didn't care for it either. Mainly also because Adam Schefter ruined every single pick in the NFL draft last year. So I just didn't really care to go through that again. Because I remember he told us about Michael Penix happening before it did. So I'm like, afterwards, I was like, way to kind of ruin the
Yeah.
surprise of it all there. But nonetheless, here I'm happy for Cam Ward. I'm excited to see what he does in Tennessee. And I mean, hey, we've seen young quarterbacks come in have immediate success in that division. Trevor Lawrence won the division. We saw how quickly he was able to do that there second year. CJ Stroud, we know what he did his rookie year. Now you got Cam Ward coming in. I mean, you never know at this point, but yeah, definitely got to give him his credit. Uh, And honestly, he is one of the least talked about. I saw it on there. It's one of the least talked about number one picks ever. But this is a dang good quarterback. I want everyone to remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
But number two, Austin, you know, whenever we did our mock draft, there had been small talks of Cleveland or New York trading out of it, but nothing legit. There had not
Yeah.
been anything that's like, yeah, right. Then all of a sudden, like the morning of the draft, mainly the afternoon, it's like Jacksonville wants to make a big, bold move. They want to go up, and I'm like, that's cute, but I think you're going to need to get a lot from Cleveland to even come close to matching the offer they want for that number two pick. Well, I got proven wrong very quickly in the draft. As soon as Cleveland was on the clock, they made the deal with Jacksonville, and it's an interesting deal for Cleveland. Jacksonville got the number two overall pick and the 104th overall pick and the 200th pick. Cleveland got Jacksonville's uh, fifth overall pick, the number 36 overall pick, number 126, and Jacksonville's first round pick next year in the NFL draft. So they could go up and get Travis Hunter, number two overall. There was all the talk Jackson wanted to make a big, bold move. James Gladstone and them wanted to make the move. There's your big, bold move going again, potentially the best player in the draft and a guy who they announced as wide receiver and corner. So you wonder if it's going to be two ways for him in Jacksonville, but a great move for Jacksonville to go up and get him.
I like this move. One, it's that big splash in your first draft as a young GM. I like that. Going out and taking a big swing. And at least right now, this is going to rally the Jacksonville fan base behind you as a decision maker. You come in, you take the big swing, you make an aggressive move for a team that really is right there in their division, right there in this AFC. And this is a big move that can help. And you talk about it. Look, this is like if it pans out, this is like getting two first round picks.
Yeah.
You're going to get a wide receiver and a cornerback. And look, these are the two areas I think Jacksonville's wanted to fill more desperately than any other position in the last few drafts. You see, they went out and got Brian Thomas, but now with Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram gone, they're going to need help in that receiving room again if Trevor Lawrence is going to have any success this season. But we think about it, the last few years, we've been begging him to take corner. Thought it would be Joey Porter Jr. a couple years ago at the end of the first round, and it feels like they've just been going another direction. And then you had you had Jawan Taylor leave, Cam Robinson gets suspended, and so then they had to go Antoine Harrison a few years ago. So yeah, it's just been a lot of different things for them. But in this draft, they get themselves to get a lockdown number one corner, and at the very least, a guy who could be number two to Ryan Thomas in the receiving core, if not the number one overall receiver on this team as well. So I like the big swing, the big aggressiveness to try and upgrade this team on both sides of the ball with one pick.
I will say this. Well, multiple thing. Number one, I talked about that James Gladstone worked under Les Snead in LA, how they like to build in the trenches. Les Snead also had another model in LA, which was frick them picks.
Yeah.
So, I completely forgot about that motto that was there. And I believe they got the Rams a Super Bowl trophy. So it wasn't a bad strategy for them. Number two here, though, let's talk about it from the Browns' perspective, though, because, like I said, whenever we did our mock draft, there was very little talk. It started ramping up, and now you're getting a first round pick next year for it. You got a couple extra picks. I think one of them ended up being Quinshawn Judkins in the second round here. Uh, is this a good deal for Cleveland? Because, yeah, you got you picks and everything for the future, but you missed out on maybe, and this, I'm not saying he is, I'm saying this is what people are thinking, but perhaps a generational type talent in Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I think there's obviously give and take. To me, I liked them taking Travis Hunter there because, like you said, this is a generational talent, and this is a chance to spin a new face and a new franchise player with everything that's happened the last couple of years. This is a chance to get the fan base maybe back on your side, especially when you compound that with the extension of Myles Garrett and convincing him to stick around. To me, that would have really have gotten the fan base back on your side, and we can forget about Deshaun Watson for a little bit. But I do not hate this move. Look, the Browns need a quarterback. That much is obvious. If you look what they did in the fourth and fifth rounds of this draft, you can tell quarterback is really what they need. But look, this is the kind of draft where we're not really sure where we stand on the quarterbacks. Really ended up only being what, two first round quarterbacks
Yeah.
this year. Um, so there's next year now. You get yourself a piece that we'll talk about in a minute that I think is going to be a great piece continuing to build this defense. Uh, and then, hey, if you don't have a good year this year and the guys you drafted later in this draft at quarterback, neither one of them really working out, look, you're going to have yourself a chance to maybe pick at the top of the draft, and maybe have two picks at the top of the draft to get it right with the quarterback and some more pieces. So I think while you're missing out on a big explosive piece like Travis Hunter, they have so many holes on this team to fill that getting draft picks and filling another hole and then kind of looking at maybe next year to be the year you go out and get the big swing on the franchise quarterback. I like that strategy in a draft class like this one.
I think so, especially given the kind of the hype around the QBs next year. I mean, I could label them all off, but I mean, I'll just name, I mean, Arch Manning, Drew Aller. I mean, Nico, obviously, it depends on what he does at UCLA
Yeah.
this year, obviously. And there's, who knows, there's always a couple of guys that move up as the draft process goes along. So, I mean, the QB class next year is already a lot better, people think, than what it was this year. So it does make some sense if they don't like what they had in this draft. But obviously, they drafted Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders. We'll talk more about that later on. But the Giants at number 3 was a spot people kind of thought was the first kind of pivot point. Was would they go defense? Would they go with the quarterback that they did a lot of work on? And in the end, they went with the safe pick, Abdul Carter, for that defense. And this is one we both agreed on. If they want to make a push for the playoffs this year or even attempt it, this is the kind of pick they needed to make.
Yeah, and this puts them at maybe the best front four in the NFL right now. Brian Burns, Kevon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence the second, and now Abdul Carter. Quarterbacks, say your prayers before you line up against this New York Giants defense. Look, maybe if you can get some time, maybe you can beat that secondary over the top with the passing game. But running the ball is going to be tough, and look, getting those throws out is going to be tough. So I like building this fierce defensive front. This is a defense again that I've talked about a few times. Was a lot better than the offense. If they can get this offense on the right track and look, they beef up this defense a little bit more, this team could be making a run at the playoffs. And now you got Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and another guy we'll talk about in just a little bit in this quarterback room. So surely one of these guys can make something happen in this quarterback room for the Giants and get them on the right track.
Yeah, hey, and don't forget they got a pretty solid running back in round 2, if I do say myself by the name of Cam Scatterbo.
Yeah.
No bias at all there. No bias at
Oh,
all. Pick number 4, New England Patriots. Look, this is the pick everyone mocked them going with. Will Campbell from LSU. It's an obvious pick for them to protect the O-line. But the one thing I loved about it was his interview with NFL Network. I think it might have been NFL Network. I don't know if you saw it, but he said, I will fight and die to protect Drake May every single snap of the game. I'm like, that is one of the best
yeah.
interviews I've heard of me. Like, he's about to cry. He's like, I will fight and I will die to protect him. I'm like, that's the kind of guy that I want protecting my blind side.
Yeah, and that's the kind of talk we've come to expect from him. With the talk, during the season about working at Amazon, if he gave up a sack a game, comparing himself to defensive linemen. So yeah, that's the kind of spirit and the kind of interview process we've expected from him. But yeah, this was the kind of expected pick. Mike Vrabel loves to build them trenches, wants to protect his franchise quarterback. This seems like maybe besides the number one pick, unless you're Mel Kiper, the easiest pick in the draft.
Yeah, it really was. Speaking of, like a trade that happened earlier, Cleveland was at number 5, and Daniel Jeremiah was talking about on NFL Network that if Cleveland trades back to 5, why wouldn't they field offers at number 5 for someone to come up and get Ashton Genty so they could collect more picks? I haven't really heard if they really agreed on anything, but in the end, they decided to make the pick. And they went with Mason Graham here, which is funny because we had Mason Graham going 5th overall in most mock drafts, just to Jacksonville. But Mason Graham, you're pairing him on that defensive line with Myles Garrett. You might as well make the strength of your team even stronger, I think. I mean, that's not a bad option.
Yeah, look, the defensive line is where this team is fierce. Get you a guy up the middle who's going to spend the majority of his career, the early part of his career, with Cleveland, everything works out, and spends what is this, 5 or 6 year extension for Myles Garrett. So that's his whole rookie contract with the team option. So yeah, you've basically got yourself a great defensive line pairing for the next 5 years if everything works out. So I like this move. I think if you're looking to upgrade a defensive tackle, this was a surefire pick. I know some people, anonymous NFL scouts and GMs, were kind of dogging Mason Graham and thought he had, no skill, which I thought was kind of out of nowhere. This is a guy we've been talking about since last college football season as a guy who's going to go way high in the NFL draft, and the Cleveland Browns made sure that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, I hate saying it, but I want to give Cleveland some credit, though. Again, with the trade they made, they were able to get Quinshaw Judkins and more guys that we'll talk about later on. But, Austin, we got to talk about the heartbreaking pick in number 6. You were not the only one. Shout out my friend David, a Broncos fan. He hated that the Raiders got this guy, pick number 6. Ashton Genty going 6 overall to the Raiders. We all thought it would happen. But whenever that trade with Cleveland and Jacksonville, we kind of wondered, is someone going to make a trade and jump up ahead of them? And in the end, somehow the Raiders ended up with Ashton Genty. I can't imagine a more perfect fit. I know you wanted him in Chicago, but this is where everyone expected him to end up.
I'm just disappointed in this pick. Look, I know Ashton Genty's a great player, and it has nothing to do with the Bears. This pick just, I don't know, just flat out doesn't make sense to me. I get that Ashton Genty's a great fit for what Pete Carroll wants to do. I just think there's absolutely so much more this team needs. I don't know. I think Ashton Genty's great. I hope he's able to lead this team to an undefeated season in a Super Bowl as a rookie. That's how much I love Ashton Genty. But there's so many problems with this team that Ashton Genty's going to run for, I don't know, 3,000 yards this season, and they're going to lose every game because they didn't do anything to fix this team. Um, there's a lot better to do here. Puzzling move, but I get taking best available if that's what you're going to do. I like Ashton Genty. I hope he works out in Las Vegas, but I just think there's so much more for this team that taking Ashton Genty was just not the right move. I don't know. It was frustrating. Obviously, it's extra frustrating that he didn't end up with the Bears. But live and you learn, and things happen for a reason. Hopefully, the Raiders are able to use him and utilize him and not waste his talents.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say the Raiders offense is the good point. I mean, I'm with you mainly on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, their defense, they have Max Crosby. What else besides Max Crosby? Their offense, though, should be a lot improved from last year. I mean, you got Geno, you got Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers had one of the best rookie seasons ever from a tight end. So the offense should be better. The defense, to me, I get your point there with the defense because, I mean, they got Max Crosby and really not a whole lot else. Pick number 7, the New York Jets here. This is another one that we kind of agreed on. They were either going tight end here or offensive line. It really was what made sense there. In the end, they would go offensive tackle, Armando Membu, and kind of what I talked about in my mock draft. You plug him on the right side, Olu Fashanu on the left. You got Vera Tucker, Simpson. You got all the guys. Your O-line is set now, whether Fields is your franchise quarterback or you're looking at a new guy next year or 2 years down the road.
Yeah, I agree. This is the move that made sense. We saw the issues that he had in Chicago when, look, Justin Fields is a freak athlete, but you can't have the guy running and scrambling around all game. It didn't work in Chicago. They see that. Aaron Glenn goes and feels a huge need, gets a great offensive line. Like you said, now Fields is protected, or whoever else ends up coming to play this quarterback. Now you can start to build and really beef up this team. But I like this pick here again because I think Breece Hall is going to be a great option. I think Garrett Wilson is a great option. I think this may be a little too high to go tight end right now, especially there are some good tight ends, and they got themselves a good tight end later in this draft.
Yep.
So I think that this was the right move. This was the biggest need that they had. And then secondary, maybe you could look at some help for Sauce Gardner. But the secondary, guys in the secondary dropped way lower in this first round and into this draft than we expected. So plenty of time to do that later down the road. I like this pick. I think it made the most sense.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about Mason Taylor going to get him from LSU in round 2. Azari Thomas, a corner from Florida State, Malachi Moore from Alabama. They made some good picks to help out other positions there later in the draft because you talked about it. There was so much value there, especially with some of the picks in this draft. Now let's get to the pick that I don't want to say this is where it kind of, shook things up, but it kind of did when you think about it because me and you, when we did our mock draft, we're like, Carolina, defense, defense, defense needs to be the pick here. They got to go defense. And instead, they do something to help out Bryce Young, getting Tedero McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. I think at the very start of the draft process, people kind of had this, but went away from it when they're like, they need defense. So, nonetheless, it's a weapon for Bryce Young, which I get you need defense, and they did get some defensive pieces later on. But this shows something that I think a lot of people were questioning during the points of last year, which is committing to Bryce Young being your quarterback by getting him some help.
Yeah, and they did this. So I am hats off here. It's not just this pick. Another wide receiver drafted, UDFA, another wide receiver, and then they signed Hunter Renfrow. This is a team that made a huge commitment to their quarterback over the course of the draft and the days after. So yes, as much as I think they need defensive help, I think if I'm Bryce Young, this is a breath of fresh air, and this instills some confidence in me that my team trusts me to go out here and play football for them next year.
And over here, they got Nick Scorton in round 2, a guy who was basically considered a first-round pick. I mean, so there's your edge rusher getting some help there on the defensive line. Number 9, New Orleans Saints. This was a one where we wondered, would we see, the next quarterback go in the draft here? Instead, they make the move that, I would say is the safest pick, which, if you're kind of where they're at as the Saints, is not the worst thing in the world. Going Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle from Texas. Look, Ryan Ramczyk retired. We talked about it. Trevor Penning has been, to say the least, a disappointment on that offensive line. This was the safe pick, but also getting their quarterback in round 2, that's some considered a shocker. But if you really look at the different aspects of it, it made a lot of sense, both these moves. But Kelvin Banks, a safe pick at pick number 9.
Yeah, I like this pick. I had him going offensive tackle here. This makes sense. That offensive line needs some help. You think about how great the Saints were, 5-6 years ago. Yeah. It's the great offensive line that helped them run the ball well, throw the ball well. I think that's a great place for this team to start, continue to build that offensive line and stay strong there. And then, like you said, they went out and got their guy in round 2. It'll be interesting to see how this quarterback room kind of shakes out. Because you think about they've got 4 guys in the QB room now with Carr, Haener, Rattler, and then Tyler Shuck in the second round. So it'll be a wonder who, at least one of the guys who's going to be the odd man out, could potentially be more than that. But yeah, who's going to be the odd man out in that quarterback room? NFL teams usually carry 2, 3 at most quarterbacks. So somebody's got to go. And it won't be Derek Carr. So 3 guys fighting for 2 spots. It'll be interesting to see where the New Orleans Saints decide to go. But I like offensive tackle here.
Yeah, the money Derek Carr is getting means that just can't happen.
Yeah.
To me, though, then this is just my prediction. I would not be shocked if he starts week 1 in New Orleans, mainly because he's a 25-year-old quarterback. You're not drafting a 25-year-old quarterback in the second round like this high unless you expect him to compete right away. At least that's just my opinion. I think they're going to expect him to compete with Spencer Rattler, and I would not be shocked if he's their quarterback week 1. I'm not saying it'll go well. That's not what I'm saying here. But I don't think you draft a guy like that at the age 25 this early, given other options they could have gone with a QB, if they weren't planning to kind of give him a chance to start right away.
Yeah, I agree. And I think kind of the mindset is, look, he's played for several different coaches in several different systems at several different universities. So he's seen a lot of offense and he's seen a lot of defense. So you're hoping that balancing all that out, hey, maybe this guy can come in and, he won't be perfect, but he can come in. He'll not be surprised by coverages. He won't be surprised by the playbook that he runs. And hopefully come in and learn quickly. I agree with you. I would not be surprised if Tyler Shuck was starting week 1.
Absolutely. But now let's get to the double digits. Pick number 10, the Chicago Bears here. You hinted at it. They went Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. Not a shocker, at least to me. At least I have him going Tyler Warren, but Colston Loveland. This makes sense. I kind of talked about the 12 personnel for Ben Johnson in his offense. It makes sense. But I've done all the talking I need to do on it. Your thoughts on this number 10 pick for Chicago with Colston Loveland?
In the moment, I was a little bit disappointed, but I was still on the downward swing of the Ashton Genty pick. Um, Look, I think that Colston Loveland is going to be good. In the in the days and hours since the first round of the draft, I've come around a little bit, and I still have confidence in Ryan Poles because he has a habit of doing this, taking guys maybe you wouldn't necessarily expect at the spot he's taking them because of the fit, and then you double that with it's an offensive player. This has been Johnson's first draft. He's going out and getting his guy. So yes, I was a little bit disappointed at first because this wasn't Tyler Warren. Just I thought maybe Tyler Warren here just because of all the different ways Tyler Warren was used at Penn State. That felt like kind of a shoe in for the way Ben Johnson might use him. Throw him in at quarterback sometimes, throw him here, throw him there, throw him everywhere. But he goes with Colston Loveland, and maybe it's just because of the way this guy moves. He's kind of I didn't realize how slim kind of he is for a tight end. Almost like a really big wide receiver out
Yeah.
there. So whatever Ben Johnson sees in him, I'm going to trust. I'm not going to complain too much. I'm excited because we're looking to add another weapon for Caleb Williams, looking to go out and develop this offense. And I can never turn against that. So forward thinking right now, I'm excited for Colston Loveland. I'm all in on what the Bears have got to do and what Ben Johnson is trying to show us in this first year.
Yeah, I think so as well. And we'll talk more about obviously after we get through this first round, talking about the draft classes. Bears second round. Oh boy, that's all I got to say. But next up, pick number 11, San Francisco 49ers here. We had them going defense. Each of us thought they lost so many pieces on defense. Whatever they picked was going to help the team out. They go Mikael Williams, the edge rusher from Georgia. We talked about the upside. The arm length he has is incredible. Pairing him up with Nick Bosa, a tough duo. But the one thing, as a whole, with the Niners draft class, I'll say they went defensive line a lot in this draft. They basically said, we're going to build up the trenches again. Because you think about it, when they made their early Super Bowl runs, what was their defensive line? You had Bosa, Armstead. You had D Ford. Wow, why can't I think of the other one? Who was the other defensive
DeForest
line?
Buckner.
DeForest Buckner, thank you. Gosh, I couldn't think of the name. But you had all four of those guys on a defensive line that were getting pressure nonstop on the quarterback. Why not try that again with getting a good D line here? And it's a good pick here in round one that kind of started off.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. Look, I like this pick. We both thought defense, both thought defensive line. And look, this is what they're going to keep doing. They want kind of. I'll say this. I think those early Super Bowl runs were kind of reminiscent of kind of the way the defensive line works in Philadelphia this past year. They have so many guys that they're constantly swapping these guys out. They've got just fresh uh, dogs on the field at all time, guys that are just going to be able to get after the quarterback. Hey, you get tired, we got another guy to throw out there. And I think they're trying to get back to that. Look at how well it worked for Philadelphia this year. Look at how they got to Patrick Mahomes and his pretty good offensive line. So build that back up, get yourself back on track. But again, they lost so many pieces on the line too that this is really where they needed help anyway.
Yeah, and hey, they drafted another quarterback in the seventh round, Curtis Rourke from Indiana. I'm just saying, depending on what goes with the Brock Purdy situation, Curtis Rourke, I think, is a good fit in that 49er offense. So, we'll see there. But yeah, defense heavy for the Niners in this draft. Cowboys at number 12. To me, this felt like a wide receiver pick, something offensively. And then, me being a complete moron and just not thinking about it, I'm like, oh, right, just probably the best guard they've had in recent memory, Zach Martin, retired this offseason. They got to fill that void, and they do it by getting a guy by the name of Tyler Booker from Alabama. There were some injury concerns with him a little bit, but the Cowboys, they usually do this. You think, could they make the big bold move? But the last couple of drafts with Jerry since the 2010s, they like building up this offensive line or defensive line early in the draft, and that proved the point here at pick number 12.
I like Tyler Booker, and I like replacing Zach Martin. You're right. one of the most consistent, best interior offensive linemen in all of the NFL during his entire career. Definitely was going to need to be replaced if this team wants to do anything. But if you want Tyler Booker here, I think they could have traded back a substantial amount and still been able to get Tyler Booker. I mean, Tyler Booker's a guy we weren't talking about getting drafted until the Texans pick
Yeah.
at the end of this first round. At least me personally. So I like the pick here. I think it's a little bit of a reach, not necessarily skill wise, but the way this draft is set out and the way the teams behind you were going to pick, I definitely think you could have traded down and helped yourselves out a little bit in this draft and in the future by adding some more picks or maybe some more players. But I think this is the right idea for this team.
I think so as well. And now it's with the pick 13, the Miami Dolphins. Look, the rumors of Jalen Ramsey getting traded, I feel confident it'll happen any day now. It's just a matter of when. Obviously, there's the rumors there. We thought maybe corner secondary made sense, replacing Teron Armstead. They did neither of that. They decided instead to build the defensive line, get Kenneth Grant from Michigan, which makes some sense. But honestly, I think that's a great pick, putting him on the defensive line. You think about it. Since Christian Wilkins has left, that defensive line has been not great there in Miami. So it makes some sense there. But another thing I want to run by you, Austin, we talked about Jalen Ramsey being gone, secondary. Picked one guy in the secondary. I mean, to me, that seems like if you're losing him, you might want to try to rebuild that up. Also, the safety position, they got Dante Trader Jr. to replace Javon Holland, but I expected more from that. But nonetheless, Kenneth Grant here, pick 13 Miami, building in the trenches.
Yeah, I like Kenneth Grant. I was a lot higher on Kenneth Grant and Walter Nolan, who we'll talk about also in just a little bit, than a lot of people were coming into this draft. I thought interior defensive line was kind of underrated coming into this draft. Clearly, NFL GMs were kind of more in my camp than the experts. But I was surprised to see Kenneth Grant go this high. I like the pick. He's a great athlete and a great asset. Especially for teams that are going to need a defensive line. We've seen over the last couple of years them trying to build this defensive line. They added Bradley Chubb, who got hurt. Who was the other outside linebacker?
Jaden Phillips, I think.
Yes, Jalen Phillips that they lost. So yes, building up this defensive line has been something they're trying to do. I like continuing to do that. But yeah, it was a little bit surprising that they didn't go corner here. That they didn't really fill any of the spots they really needed to fill with this team. But Kenneth Grant's going to be a great piece and a great asset for them.
Yeah, let's give him credit. Ollie Gordon, a man who we know very much well. They got him in the 6th round. Could be the new piece behind Devon Achane. That would be kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Quinn Ewers in the 7th round. And I just want to ask you, is it crazy for me to think that Quinn Ewers would do really well if he became the starter in Miami? Is that crazy for me to think in this offense?
No, I actually really like this pick because he's an older guy. He's going to have some experience. And look, if Tua struggles or gets hurt, he's going to have time to kind of learn this playbook, and he won't just be getting thrown in week 1, kind of scrambling for it. I really like this pick, and I think Quinn Ewers, kind of like you, could really work out in this offense. Need be him come in and step in to be the leader of this team.
That was just me in the 7th round. I was like, am I crazy to think that this is like an insanely good pick for Miami in the 7th round? Nonetheless, though, pick 14, the Indianapolis Colts. Austin, somehow, some way, Tyler Warren has fallen into the Colts' lap at pick 14. I'm pretty sure Chris Ballard almost tripped sprinting up there to like pick the pick, make the pick, and it's Tyler Warren. Just he was what the Colts needed at tight end. If it wasn't him, it was going to be Colston Loveland. Tyler Warren, an Indianapolis Colt. It makes sense for him.
Yeah, I won't say too much. We talked about this. If Tyler Warren made it to 14, this would be the pick. It was the pick. It makes too much sense. This was a hard pick to mess up.
It really was. Of course, we'll give a shout out to the Colts for your Notre Dame quarterback, Riley Leonard, heading to the Colts. And honestly, why not have him get involved in the quarterback battle right now? Why not?
That's what I was going to say. Why not? Look, maybe he doesn't have all the skills that Anthony Richardson does, but he's a better leader, and he's not going to quit on you. Guys on the sideline throwing up and getting ready to go back out there in a national championship. So as far as that's concerned, you're getting a dog in Riley Leonard. So I'd love to see him get an opportunity in Indianapolis if Anthony Richardson's not the answer for them.
Yeah, and you think about it also, just a running quarterback in general with Anthony Richardson, he could fit right in. I mean, go watch that opening drive of the national championship. My gosh, like you said, you're getting a dog. You're getting a dog there
Yeah.
as your quarterback. Pick 15, the Atlanta Falcons, Austin. They did it, Austin. They finally did it. They addressed it. They go out and get Jalen Walker, the linebacker from Georgia. You said whenever we were doing our mock draft that he was a Roquan Smith that could rush the passer. That's a dang good comparison, and I think Atlanta is going to be dang happy to have him on their defense.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's going to be able to do so much for them. They can just throw him around wherever they want. You think about losing Deion Jones after last season. So look, you could use some help in the interior linebacker. You decide you like this guy better as an outside linebacker or a defensive end rushing the quarterback. Do that as well. But he brings you so many options and he's so versatile. He was going to be one of these first edge rushers off the board. And he goes number two just behind his good old buddy from Georgia. So yeah, this was a great pick for Atlanta. And hey, in this first round, they weren't done picking on
No,
the defensive line.
no, they weren't. But I also want to say Xavier Watts, Notre Dame, and get him 96th. Austin, just imagine that secondary right now. Xavier Watts and Jesse Bates running that secondary in Atlanta.
Yeah, look, any team that's getting Xavier Watts is getting a freak athlete. Look, he's Kyle Hamilton 2.0. Except for with Xavier Watts, the thing I like a lot more is that he was way better at forcing turnovers.
Mhm.
Nothing against Kyle Hamilton. He's worked out perfectly in the NFL. But Xavier Watts, you can't throw a bad ball his direction. It's an interception, it's a fumble. This guy flips the field in a hurry. Him and Jesse Bates are going to be exciting to watch, especially with some of these pieces that Atlanta's got on the defensive line. Look out for this team to actually win the AFC South this year or the
I was,
NFC South this
I
year.
was about to say that is the question. Will they actually be able to pull it off this year? One can hope. Arizona pick 16, Cardinals. If this pick doesn't confirm where they were kind of going, I think had Kenneth Grant been on the board, he would have been the pick here. But they go out, get Walter Nolan on the defensive line. Look, that defensive line, I said it in the mock draft. If Calais Campbell is considered one of your best defensive tackles at the age he is, that's a problem. And they addressed that here with pick 16. Walter Nolan, it's kind of a shocker to some people going this high. Of course, there's some questions with his character, but nonetheless, dang good football player the Cardinals are getting here at pick 16.
Yeah, 6'4", 296. That's all you need to hear, really. This guy's a freak. He's a unit. Like you said, Calais Campbell, Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle. Not the worst guys to have, but you think about Tomlinson, hasn't really been himself the last couple of years. And then Calais Campbell getting up there in age. So get a guy to stick behind him who's just an absolute unit. And he's young, got tons of potential. Maybe like you said, maybe character's an issue, but with guys like Calais Campbell in front of him, surely you can get that straightened out and get this guy on the field making an impact in a hurry.
And let's not forget, second round, boy, did they get some value. Somehow, Will Johnson, a guy that I had going, I think 11th in my mock draft. I don't remember where you had him going in yours.
Uh, Eight, I
Yeah,
think, to Carolina.
maybe, but he falls all the way down to 47 to the Cardinals, a team who we talked about secondary was a need with them as well. And they get a guy, Will Johnson. Obviously, there's going to be injury concerns, but I mean, the upside to potentially, if the injury stuff isn't that big of a deal, to get this guy at pick 47, incredible value. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
I mean, this is the number one defensive back in the draft if you exclude Travis Hunter. For the sake of this argument, we will. This is the number one pure defensive back in the draft. And you get him in the second round. Look, this is the best pick in the draft if Will Johnson is healthy and stays healthy in the NFL. This is the best pick in the draft.
Yeah.
This is a guy who's going to be an instant difference maker. He's a heck of a ball player. If he's healthy and stays healthy, Carolina has just massively upgraded this defense in the secondary.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, you really could have swapped their first and second round picks either way, and people still would have been really happy with it. So some great value for the Cardinals there. Pick 17, the Cincinnati Bengals, Austin. Look, we knew they were going defense. They went defense with most of their picks in the draft. We knew they were going to go defense here, but they decided to go with Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher for Texas A&M. He's a guy who everyone talked about the whole draft process. Really explosive, but just not a lot of production. I think he only had 4.5 sacks in his career at A&M. But I think the Bengals are looking at his upside. But also, Austin, let's address it like it is. Going with an edge rusher here, what does that mean for Trey Hendrickson?
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
I'm with you. It's like this was a pretty obvious Trey Hendrickson may not be here next year kind of move. Um, because, maybe you could have gone a lot of secondary guys like we talked about had slipped this far down. Why not go and get one of those guys who, is supposed to be at the top of their position in this draft, but they go defensive line at the edge. So yeah, I think that could very well be saying, hey, we're expecting Trey Hendrickson to be gone, or at least not playing this year until he's gone. So yeah, I like this move personally. Like you said, not a lot of production, not a lot of numbers, but the skills are there. It's just a matter of giving this guy time to get out there and develop.
yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. But let's talk about Seattle at pick 18. This is the pick I had him doing the mock drafts. I just have him going up to 14 to get him. It makes sense. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. I mean, we said what we said whenever we did the mock draft. Sam Darnold's at his best when he gets help and protection in the pocket. And this is a guy you could put at any position to help out. He's very flexible in all those positions. I mean, it makes sense for this move to happen for them.
Yeah, and we talked about, maybe he's going to be a little bit small to play tackle in the NFL, but he showed out at center in the Senior Bowl. He can play guard. This guy's going to go actually anywhere you want. Yeah, I don't know how you don't take Gray Zabel here. It's a great upgrade for your offensive line, no matter where you put him. Good home run pick here for the Seattle Seahawks.
I think so as well for them. And obviously, pick 19, Tampa Bay. This is an intriguing one, but also, it's a fun when you think about it with Tampa. We thought maybe defense, linebacker position could make some sense, but instead they go Emeka Ibuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State, who, let's just address it like it is, Austin. You think about the wide receiver room in Tampa Bay, obviously, Mike Evans getting up there in age, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan had kind of a breakout year. It seems like with this pick, at least to me, they're getting ahead of a future retirement or not the same production from Mike Evans and Chris Godwin with this pick here at 19.
Agreed. And I think a big thing here is, some people are thinking about, oh, well, maybe this is for the future. But you got to think about Chris Godwin's probably not going to start the season this year. And
Right.
so this still gives you a good 1, 2, 3 punch at wide receiver with Evans and McMillan and then Ibuka. So, yeah, I like this pick. I'd rather them have gone defense, I think. But I certainly understand and see where they're coming from, and they've got a heck of an athlete. We're talking about a guy who, kind of saved himself at Ohio State. Was looking like a guy that maybe was going to be like a late round pick. But really, the last couple of years, kind of revived himself and turned himself into like the number 2 target there at Ohio State.
Man, another year, another Ohio State receiver gone in the first round. I mean, what can we say at this point? But for Tampa, we talked about it. They got another, speaking of Notre Dame, what a draft they had. Benjamin Morrison, they got him in the second round. That was a great pickup for them. I have to shout him out for my friend David and also this UCA Bear, the highest drafted UCA Bear ever, Austin. David
Wow.
Walker going to the Buccaneers in the fourth round. Big shout out to him and the UCA getting the highest rated player ever in the school's history. So big congrats. But there's go. There's some more defensive picks there for Tampa in the later rounds. Now, pick number 20. You have the Denver Broncos here. We thought it would be running back, tight end. There was all different kinds of rumors going on. They decide instead to go, I think personally, with the value pick, at least to me, given that he had somehow fallen on their board. Jahade Barron, the corner from Texas. Are you kidding me with that secondary there? With
Yeah.
Pat Surtain just having a defensive player of the year kind of year? And now this? Good luck throwing the ball against Denver.
Yeah, I think this is a great move to upgrade. the best part of your defense. Later in this draft, they definitely went some other directions, but here, right now, this was the right pick. Just like you said, it's just good value. This guy comes this far down, you got to go and make that move and make that impact play to upgrade your defense and really get yourself competing with the best of the best.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look at their corner room. Pat Surtain, you had Riley Moss, who had a pretty good year. He's now corner three for you, or two, depending on who wins between him and Jahade Barron. Uh, Good pickup there. Getting RJ Harvey, a running back, in the next round, I thought was a good pick as well. Very underrated running back in college football. But pick number 21, you had the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the whole night everyone was talking about, is this where Shedeur goes? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to do if this is the pick here. I don't know what
Yeah.
I will do. But the Steelers make a very Steeler pick and decide instead, let's keep this defense together, try to keep it up. And I think the thing, whenever we talk more about the Steelers draft after this, whenever I bring it up, is they have the vision in their head still of Derrick Henry just running all over them in that wild card round. That's why they go and get a guy in the middle like Derek Harmon from Oregon. Just a gigantic guy that could be used on the defensive line and potentially a Cameron Hayward replacement. So some good value there on the defensive line for the Steelers in round one.
Yeah, I like this move. Just like you said, the division they play in, the trenches are so important. This is a big upgrade for them. Could really be a big move for them. I like this, especially you got to this point, only one quarterback had come off the board. I like holding your tongue and saying,
Right.
hey, we're going to be able to get quarterbacks when we want to get quarterbacks. Right now, let's get the piece that's going to help us the most.
That was my thinking the whole time. It was like, I mean, if you go quarterbacks, fine. But it's like, but there's so many guys that are still available that we could go with, and then they ended up going with him. Of course, if you've not heard the story about him, rest in peace to his mother. Sadly,
Mhm.
passed away a couple hours after the draft with him. Sad story, but he's going to be a great Pittsburgh Steeler, and I know his family will be proud no matter what here. Pick 22, the Los Angeles Chargers. This was going to be an interesting one. If there was any Michigan guys, they maybe Will Johnson, we thought maybe if it was a
Yeah.
Michigan guy, but in the end they go with a surprising pick, at least to me, going on Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina. Austin, you think about the running back room last year, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, they've now completely shifted it to Najee Harris and now Omarion Hampton as that running back room.
Yeah, I don't hate him in Hampton, especially with what Harbaugh is going to try and do there and try and take some pressure off Justin Herbert. But it did surprise me after just signing Najee Harris, that they'd also go and get in Hampton in the first round. I felt like if you wanted to get like a solid back to kind of be, 1B or, the number two guy for this team, you could have gotten him later in this draft. It was a good running back draft class. But nonetheless, Amarian Hampton's a great athlete, and he's going to be an upgrade for whoever he plays for.
Absolutely. Now pick 23, the Green Bay Packers. Austin, for the first time since 2002, as they announced it whenever they did the pick, the Packers have drafted a receiver in the first round in Matthew Golden from Texas. Look, it made sense. They've needed wide receiver, dare I say, since 2003 probably. They've
Yeah.
needed some wide receiver help, and to get a guy like Matthew Golden at this point in the draft, I mean, it's great value for them.
Yeah, look, this is a guy that was supposed to go a lot higher than this, but teams went in a lot of different directions. He falls here. Look, you've had maybe some concerns with the guys in your receiving core right now. They're not always consistently producing. This is a chance to go out there and get another guy who's going to be a big time deep ball threat and could definitely help take some of that pressure off Jordan Love and help this offense hit the next level.
And of course, the rumors about Jair Alexander, Packers didn't pick a corner in this draft until round 7. So makes you wonder, are things calm down there? And Jair Alexander is going to be sticking around in Green Bay a little bit longer. We'll wait and see. Pick 24, Minnesota. This is one me and you both, I believe, had them trading out of this pick because they really only had 4 draft picks the entire draft. But in the end, they end up sticking here at 24. And it's something that, again, you just don't think about till it pops in your head. They go Donovan Jackson, the lineman from Ohio State. Uh, you just remember what cost them that wild card game against the Rams. They couldn't block worth a dang in that game. They couldn't block to save their life. And you're getting depth on the O line. It makes sense.
Yeah, and look, they've taken great leaps in the free agency already to help upgrade this team. But yeah, to go out and even add more pieces and continue to upgrade this offensive line, I like it. I still would like to see this team trade out of this pick and upgrade themselves for the future. I felt like they were in a good enough spot where they could have done that. But nonetheless, they go out and they get them something that's gonna help the team. They didn't waste this pick. They made this pick count.
Yeah, they did, especially did the team that made a trade for pick 25. The Texans saw all that O linemen go off the board, and they're just like, look, there's really nothing we like here. Let's get out of this pick. Let's get some capital and maybe look to get guys round two. So they make the trade with the New York Giants. Of course, the Giants got the 25th pick. The Texans got pick 34, 99, and the Giants' third round pick next year. Decent value to move up just 9 spots for the Giants to select their quarterback of the future in Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. You know, you wondered if there was going to be a second quarterback to go at this point. And then the Giants make that trade up, get Jackson Dart here in a situation where he should have plenty of time to grow and develop in that job in New York.
Yeah, I mean, he's got plenty of options, plenty of opportunity. Yeah, there's no reason to rush him to get him out on the field. Take his time to develop him. But I love this pairing because to me, Jackson Dart reminds me a lot of a young Josh Allen. That big arm, that, sometimes questionable decision making. Maybe not as athletic as Josh Allen, but still not a bad athlete in his own right. To me, Jackson Dart uh, is a guy who I like as the number 2 quarterback coming off the board in this draft class. I don't think he's getting enough credit for what he did. I think people look at the interception numbers and complain a little too much. He's young. He's got a big arm. He's got plenty of time to learn and grow. But look, Brian Dabble was a huge asset for Josh Allen in Buffalo. And if he can get that same kind of production from Jackson Dart, this is going to be a home run pick for New York.
I think so too. And you thought the trades were done? No, they weren't. We had to trade the next pick, the Rams, trading out of their pick here at pick 26 and making the trade with the Atlanta Falcons. And boy, oh boy, Austin, this is an interesting deal for multiple reasons. Number one, Atlanta got pick 26 and number 101 overall. The Rams got pick 46, number 242 overall, and the Falcons' first round pick next year for the Falcons to come up. And Austin, we talked about getting one edge rusher. They got two in round one, getting James Pierce Jr., the edge from Tennessee. And I know some people are like, wow, giving up a first round pick, that's a lot to move up, that late in the first round. But I take a quote from Mike Mayock, who is one of the first analysts that I watched on the draft. If he turns into the player that you think he is, it doesn't matter what you gave up for him. And it's clear Atlanta has belief in him to be another edge rusher there for the Falcons defense.
Yeah, this is very reminiscent, but later in the draft of just a few years ago, and we saw the Texans trade back up to the top of the draft to get Will Anderson. And they went and upgraded both sides of the ball in that one draft. Stroud, Anderson. It's later in the draft, way later in the draft, but still, you're sacrificing that future first round pick now in an effort to get a guy who's a top 10 player in this draft talent wise.
Yeah.
Off the field, that's a different story. But if they can straighten this guy out, get him playing the football he's supposed to be playing, he's expected to be playing, this is a home run pick, a home run trade. That first round pick won't matter because it'll be at the bottom of the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, like I said, it doesn't matter if he turns into what you think he is, it's worth the move. Now, pick 27 to the Ravens. I hate how good this pick is. I hate how good it is because I told you when I started my mock drafts, I kept on getting Malachi Starks to the Ravens at 27. I'm like, it's too perfect of a fit. I have to get him out of this pick. I have to find somewhere else for him in this mock draft. And sure enough, he's right there to the Ravens at pick 27. And he's going to pair up with Kyle Hamilton in that secondary in Baltimore. It's a freaking great pick, but God, I hate it.
Yeah, this is unbelievable that it just works out perfectly for the Baltimore Ravens. But this is 1,000% the pick that needed to be made here. Malachi Starks going to the Ravens. Just what more can you say? Just another guy to play like a Kyle Hamilton or a Geno Stone guy. They just seem to find these safeties and make them work no matter what. This is a huge pick for them.
And let's not forget them getting Mike Green in round 2, the guy who led college football in sacks. Can the Ravens just start sucking at making draft picks? Because I swear, every year the draft comes around, and I'm like full of optimism, and then I see the Ravens draft class, and I'm like, it's every single year. They're so good at drafting. I hate them. Nonetheless, it's a great pick. Congrats to Malachi Starks. It's a great fit for him. Pick 28 now, Detroit Lions. Kind of. I mean, in my mock draft, that's where I'm getting Tyler Booker, but really there wasn't a lot there for them on that guard position. So they decided to go on the defensive line, which needed a lot of help this year. Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. Look, that defense had so many injuries last year, Austin. Anything to give them more depth or talent on that defense, that's a win.
Yeah, that was clear. They tried to build last year and recover from all the injuries. They couldn't. This year, they say, hey, let's just add some guys and build this defensive line. Dan Campbell likes his trenches. He wins his games in the trenches. So why not go and upgrade those trenches?
Yeah. We'll say though, shout out to him. First Razorback ever going to them at pick 70, Isaac Tesla. They gave up a lot of capital for him, so they must believe in him. But the one thing that I'm not going to make the mistake of that me and you did the first draft of Dan Campbell, one of the first ones, um, it may seem crazy. Don't doubt what Detroit's going to be able to do with them. I mean, we
Yeah.
are both like Jahmyr Gibbs, really this high, and then look what he turned into. So we need to just shut our mouths and trust in Dan Campbell and the Lions to make something happen with them.
Yes.
Pick 29, Washington Commanders here, who just got announced today. They're going to look to make their stadium a new stadium where the old RFK Stadium was. So actually returning to Washington, D.C., kind of a cool thing there. It's great how things have gotten better since a certain guy has left that franchise for good.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they go O-line here, pick 29, Josh Connerly Jr. You learned you have a franchise quarterback. The least you could do is try to protect him. It couldn't hurt.
Yeah. This is kind of the textbook. Our number two overall pick worked on a quarterback. This is the immediate draft after is almost always an offensive line. When that first round quarterback hits the year before, the next year, offensive lineman. It's like clockwork, people. It happens all the time, NFL franchises, but it's the right thought process. Hey, this guy worked. Now let's make sure he works for as long as possible.
I mean, yeah, simple enough there. He works. It makes sense. Don't question it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not now at pick 30. The Buffalo Bills were here. And somehow, I don't know how I got a pick exactly at number 30. That was exactly correct, but somehow I did. Maxwell Harrison, the corner from Kentucky, former Bold Take Podcast Player of the Week. If you know, you know. But a good fit. The Bills needed help in the secondary. We watched it live and knew they needed help. Here you go, getting a guy like Maxwell Harrison.
Yeah, this is a huge upgrade. We're talking about speedy, fast. Look, Xavier Worthy, not going to be just blowing past Maxwell Harrison in next year's AFC Championship. Look, this is a big upgrade. But look, we saw it firsthand. This team needs not just secondary, but secondary depth. They had a good secondary last year, but starter gets hurt. Guess what? Elam comes in, gets burned, lose the game. Now you go in, you attack this secondary, upgrade this secondary, and get this team back on track and try and get yourself to the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, and we talked about the trenches. How about these next 3 picks for them in the draft? TJ Sanders from South Carolina, Landon Jackson, a guy you had going in the first round, and Deion Walker from Kentucky. So you can tell they're going all in on this defense in this draft and trying to go all in on the defense this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now 2 more picks, Austin, and they just decide to flip flop. Eagles and Chiefs making a flip flop. The Chiefs getting a 5th round pick to move back 1 spot, and the Eagles. Austin, somehow, some way, an elite SEC defensive player is on the board for Philly, and somehow they come out of this with Jahad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama, guy we had going pretty high. They get him at pick 31, and all it cost them to trade up was a fifth round pick. How do they keep getting away with this, Austin?
I do not know. I do not understand. I don't know how Jihad Campbell got this far down the draft at all. Nobody just stepped up and picked him. So the Eagles do. And look, Nakobe Dean had the injury last year. He may not be 100% ready to go right away. So now you've got a guy that can step in and play next to Zach Bond. Until that time comes, this defense just keeps getting better and better and better and better. The Philadelphia Eagles are doing something right now, and I just can't believe it. I cannot believe that this stuff keeps working out.
You
It
know,
is unbelievable.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it's a saying there in Philly.
Yeah.
And then pick 32 to end off the first round. The Chiefs moving back one spot, get a maybe an answer to offensive tackle, which one they were going Josh Simmons from Ohio State. And that's a perfect situation for him. They have some pieces on O-line in front. He can take his time to get healthy. And I said it personally, if he was healthy, he would have gone so much earlier in this draft. And the Chiefs get him at 32. They know what they got to do. Protect Mahomes if they want to get back on top.
Yeah, this is the guy I had the Chiefs taken. Now I did have him taking him at 31. But this guy I had the Chiefs taken. Makes sense. Get you some help on the offensive line, especially since you kind of let some pieces go from last year's team, traded away Joe Tooney. So trying to get another guy out there to upgrade the offensive line, I think just going for the best offensive line player left on the board is the right move here at the end of the first round.
Absolutely. But that does it for the first round. Was a very unique first round there for the NFL draft. But let's get to breaking down our team's draft classes, Austin. Obviously, Chicago Bears had quite an interesting draft class. How are you feeling about this draft class? Tell us about them.
I really like kind of the way this draft class looks. Look, you go Colson Loveland in the first round, but then you get Luther Burden in the second round. Look, this guy first round talent, um, home run pick, one of the best picks in the draft, really at 39. He's going to come in and be a great wide receiver number three in this offense. I love going and getting some help on the offensive line, upgrading the defensive line. I like Shamar Turner a lot. Sticking him on the defensive line could be exciting. Um, Overall, I think we attacked a lot of positions of need. Um, I don't hate the running back we picked out of Rutgers, but a lot of names were still left on the board that I really liked. But again, I've come to trust kind of Ryan Poles, and especially in the late rounds of the draft, going against picking some of the names that you might recognize later in the draft and going for guys who he scouted and he deems are worthy of being picked. So I'll trust his decision making, but I do like the way this team drafted and built this team and look to get stronger, especially with those first few picks being skill positions on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm telling you, this is just my opinion on it. Kyle Monunga, I'm telling you, he's going to be a beast for y'all. I think he'll be really good value y'all got in the seventh round there at running back. Yeah. Getting Luther Burden, I was like, my gosh, yeah, get Caleb Williams more weapons for a Ben Johnson offense. That's what the
Yeah.
rest of the NFL wants to see. So I'm with you. It made some sense to go get pieces like that for the Chicago Bears. And also, I mean, it shows it's like, yeah, we're trying to get other value pieces, but we know who our coach is, Ben Johnson. We know what his strength is in offense. Let's make sure we can make that as good as we can. And you've seen that with the offseason moves and with this draft. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. But now the Steelers draft was an interesting one. Obviously, I already talked about Derek Harmon getting him around one. I love getting Caleb Johnson in round three. He is the kind of running back that fits, if we're going to keep Arthur Smith around as the offense coordinator, might as well get a halfback that fits his offense like that. He's already got experience wearing black and yellow, so I considered that a plus. Um,
Yeah.
then round four, I loved getting Jack Sawyer. I can't believe we got him. Whenever I saw the pick, I'm like, that's such a Steeler pick. It makes so much freaking sense. You knew it was going to happen there. Getting an edge rusher who, you think about it. The defensive line was the question mark whenever injuries happened. So it made a lot of sense. And then get Yaha Black, the defensive tackle from Iowa, 6'6", 336. There's you a defensive tackle that can set the middle against Derrick Henry right there. Thought it was great value there. And listen, I don't care if we drafted him in the 6th round. I don't care. The fact that we got Will Howard in the 6th round is one of the biggest W's I may have ever seen in my entire life. Because I entered the day in round 4, knowing after Jalen Milroe had gone, I was so heartbroken by that. I wanted him in Pittsburgh so bad. But I entered the day, I'm like, round 4, get Will Howard. I was like, go get him. Let's not waste time. Get the good quarterback that's left. Let's go get him. And somehow he fell to us in round 6. I love the pick. He gives me, and this is just my opinion, he gives me Josh Allen vibes. I mean, 6'4", 230 plus, can run the football really well. Such a great arm. I mean, let's not forget what he did at Kansas State before going to Ohio State and winning the national championship. So I'm very happy about that. I've already found several TikToks. Yeah, he's going to lead the Steelers to the Super Bowl. I've already made that up in my mind. Then, it wouldn't be a Steeler draft without a legacy pick, Austin. Getting a family member, Carson Bruner, whose dad played for the Steelers. Get a legacy pick. Why the frick not? Why not? And plus it's defense, so it's a win there. And then you get a guy who potentially is a new punt returner in Dante Kent from Central Michigan. Great speed, plus winning down. We gets us a corner. I kind of wish we would have gone more secondary. That's just my opinion, though. I have my opinions about it. But I think I always say teams build their rosters around beating their division opponents. And the Ravens won that division by running Derrick Henry straight right up the frickin' middle at the Steelers, and they couldn't stop him. And they're hoping this draft they did that with him. But
Yeah. This is a good draft. I really like this draft, but those first 3 picks to me are just chef's kiss. Derek Harmon, home run. Caleb Johnson, home run. Jack Sawyer, grand slam. Jack Sawyer at 123. Did anybody watch the college football playoff? Did a single NFL GM watch the college football playoff? Maybe the most impactful player, not named Jeremiah Smith. Absolutely the best defensive player in the college football playoff. It was not even close. Jack Sawyer to fall this far. I know his athleticism doesn't jump off the page, but the guy is a game changer and game wrecker. Look at what he did to Quinn Ewers. He won the game. He took that game out of Quinn Ewers' hands. He's a game changer. He's a big playmaker. This could go down as the best pick in the entire draft, and Jack Sawyer.
That's what I like to hear, Austin. That is what I love to hear right there. But last thing we're going to ask you, Austin, at least this is what I want to ask you. We talked about our team's drafts. Which team besides the Bears or the Steelers do you think had the best draft out of everybody?
Man, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I like Jacksonville's draft. Trading up to get Travis Hunter, Caleb Ransaw, another corner, beefing up this secondary, upgrading the offensive line with Wyatt Millum. I love the Bashal Tootin pick. That dude's a beast. And if they decide this is Travis Etienne is done, I think this guy can be a solid guy to come in and take the place. Pick I'm absolutely in love with, Jack Kaiser in the 4th round at 107. Jack Kaiser, older, but comes in with great veteran experience, great in coverage. He's got great vision, such an instinctual player. He sees the play before it happens. And his athleticism is really underrated. Made a lot of great plays in contested coverage on Tyler Warren in the college football playoff. Had a few interceptions in that college football playoff. All over the place, flies around the field. This guy is going to be a huge asset in the middle of the field for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was so excited to see him get picked. But I think they used all these picks that they had and all these moves that they made to upgrade this team and get this team ready to make a push to win that division this year and get themselves back on track.
You want to know my first thought whenever I saw Jack Kaiser went to Jacksonville? My first thought, I was like, they just got their brand new Paul Posluszny. That was my first immediate thought. I was like, because I don't think people remember how good of a linebacker he was in Jacksonville. He was the reason they made Saxonville happen. He was such a good linebacker. That was my first thought. I was like, oh, there's their new Paul Posluszny. That's awesome. Um, for me, and this is my opinion, and this is kind of multiple features with it. To me, the team that had the best draft by far, Atlanta Falcons. I thought the Falcons killed this draft. Again, there's questions about giving up the first round pick, but I said what I said. If James Pierce Jr. turns into what you think he can be, it doesn't matter what you gave up. Then you get Xavier Watts, all of those two guys. That secondary, my gosh. Billy Bowman, a great secondary piece as well. And then you get Jack Nelson, a gigantic, he's a tackle from Wisconsin. Need I say more? Tackles from Wisconsin turn out to be pretty solid in the NFL, getting him in the 7th round. And also, undrafted free agency, Austin. They got Kobe Bryant, the Kansas corner, who was such an underrated piece. I don't know how he went undrafted. And they got Nick Nash, the San Jose State receiver, who maybe was the best receiver in college football this year. Getting those two guys as undrafted guys with the pieces they got in the draft, I mean, I don't want to get on the Atlanta hype wagon again because I've fallen for it too many times. But this has given me hope with this kind of draft and making these kind of signings. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. This is an exciting draft, like you said, especially when you factor in those undrafted free agents. This is a great look for the Falcons. But again, kind of like I talked about with Jacksonville, the way the Falcons use these picks in these trades to get the guys that they needed, I really like this. And talking about Billy Bowman, I really really like that pick out of Oklahoma. I think not a lot of people talk about him because he's not the best tackler, but this guy is another guy like Xavier Watts that makes great plays on the ball. Another turnover forcer. These guys purely are just going to help flip the ball with their base skill set, not to mention how they'll grow being coached in the NFL as better athletes overall. But these are two guys in the secondary that are going to be difference makers and they're going to be turnover forcers.
I think so. You know who? Billy Bowman, just it's a small bit, not a lot. He's giving me tiny bits of Buda Baker vibes. Like
Yeah.
I see a lot of Buda Baker in Billy Bowman, and I think it's when in doubt, Jesse Bates gets to a point in his career, maybe they want to move on, save some money. Billy Bowman can learn, step in there. I think it's a great move for Atlanta to get him there. But that is going to do with our NFL draft recap episode. Later this week or early next week, we're going to have our NBA playoff round 1 recap. As of the day we're recording this, only one series is complete. We might have another complete by the time this is uploaded, the Cleveland Miami Heat series. But we're going to talk all about it because this has been, Austin, this is my opinion, one of the more entertaining first rounds of the NBA playoffs I have seen in quite a bit.
Yeah, and it just kind of goes to that unpredictability where the NBA kind of stands right now. There's not like a uh, premier like team that I necessarily think could just run away with it. Anybody could win on any given night. And it's a shame how unwatchable they've made NBA basketball because this is the most competitive the league's been in a while, I feel like. So maybe the NBA will make an effort to make NBA basketball a little bit more desirable and watchable, and just more available. Biggest problem with pro sports right now is how unavailable they are. NFL is the most available league, and that's not good when they only play 16 or 18 whatever games.
Yeah.
So so maybe a step to take forward. But yeah, I like the unpredictability, not to turn this into an entire rant, but I do like the unpredictability that this first round presents us with. And like I said, anybody could beat anybody on any given night. And so we got 7 games to see who the best team is.
Yeah, that's usually how it works out. The best team usually wins in a 7-game series. I
Mhm.
mean, that's the beauty of it. No matter at the end of the day, you can't be like, well, it's just one game. They got lucky. It's like
Yeah.
they won 4 games in a series. Like they earned it. They earned the series win. But we're going to talk more about that either later this week or early next week. Well, either way, we'll get that to y'all, get y'all ready for round 2 because if these series hold up where they're at, we're in for some fun round 2 matchups. All I got to say is I am rooting for a Minnesota Timberwolf Golden State Warriors round 2 matchup. That would be some fun basketball. That's all I got to say there.
Yeah.
But that's going to do it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed. Let us know in the comments. Did you enjoy your team's draft? Let us know about that. But for now, that's Austin Hill. I'm Austin Wader. We want to thank you for watching.